Most of you saw the story where our current DA has agreed with our superintendent to criminalize allegations of cheating, so that he didn't do real well on proving anyone cheated in the last couple of investigations, mainly because they didn't. I mean, we just came through a horrible ordeal of 20 teachers from Jefferson and Atherton elementary schools being accused and sitting over, in an administrative office, going through terminations that they had to rescind because they couldn't prove it, and they couldn't prove it because it didn't happen. It's very simple. We get these allegations of cheating on the state test frequently. And generally they're disproven because what they are is a statistical guess. Oh, your kids did better than we think they could in this neighborhood, which is an issue in itself. But the fact that the current DA is looking at, well, we'll treat this as a criminal thing. We'll just come in and haul them off. I mean, this is an administrative matter. It takes a lot of investigation, but I can think of nothing more terrifying to a teacher than having someone say, you're under arrest, you have been accused of cheating on the state test with your kids, and for those of you who have never bonded anyone, it takes usually close to 20 to 24 hours if we post bond immediately to get them out. And then they've got that delightful picture that we'll see probably in every TV news story with the teacher with the numbers under them, and a mugshot never makes you look your best. So we were just shocked at the thought of criminalizing this administrative matter. I mean, and I want to say that we have a lot of endorsements for candidates. What we're looking at right now is probably the Attorney General's race, where Sam Houston is a candidate, and the Harris County District Attorney's race, where Kim Ogg is a candidate, would not have been the ones we'd have been focusing on. We'd have been focusing on legislative and top of the ticket. Right now, these two races have moved to be equal to the top of the ticket, to the importance of teachers. And we're not just talking HISD. This impacts every teacher in the county. I'm going to give the group behind me a chance to introduce themselves. Let me start with Veronica.
I'm Veronica Thibodeau with A-Leaf AFT.
I'm Rita Thomas with HESP, AFT, HISD, Blue Collar Workers.
I'm Nikki Cowart, Sci-Fair AFT.
I'm Carrie Waschenfelder, Fort Bend Employee Federation.
I'm Craig Adams, Spring Branch American Federation of Teachers.
Zeph Capo, Houston Community College Trustee, District 1.
So essentially, the reason they're here is to show that we really feel this is an important issue, and the current DA, Devin Anderson, has made it a priority to get her out of that office. So we want to thank Kim Ogg for her very strong stand when we contacted her, saying, no, if I become DA, I'm not going to do that. And we want to thank Sam, who, when we wrote to him saying, well, this looks like you have concurrent jurisdiction because it's a state document. I'm going to let him explain that. And no, this Attorney General would not be interested. And I'm going to turn it over to Kim and then to Sam.
Well, I want to thank you.
Excuse
me.
Okay.
I'm not shy.
No, he's not. Never has been.
Never met a shy reporter. Does everybody sound good? All right, I'm Kim Ogg. I'm a candidate for Harris County District Attorney, and I'm pleased to be joined by teachers who represent thousands of other teachers here in Harris County. During the course of this election for Harris County DA, I've watched my opponent perp walk a principal at a high school accused of a crime, along with his assistant principal, only later to work out a plea bargain of pretrial diversion for one and dismissal of a case for another. And I'm tired of putting people in the position who are accused of being tried first in the court of public opinion. That's just wrong. Secondly, I've noticed that Ms. Anderson wants to criminalize education in a way that not just violates due process of teachers, but ought to scare parents, because our schools have enough interaction with the criminal justice system. With the recent shootings that we've seen, it's tragic that we would introduce more of our criminal justice system than is required. When I was asked last week about what I thought about Ms. Anderson's stance on utilizing the power of the grand jury and subpoenas to investigate teachers accused of cheating, I think it's a war on teachers. I think it's a headline that costs people potentially their reputations and their licenses by being by being convicted by the accusation itself, and through over-criminalization of an administrative matter. So it's my pledge not to utilize the criminal justice system to over-criminalize the actions of anybody involved in education. We've unfortunately got way too much contact between crime and schools now, and we don't need to increase it unnecessarily by taking what is purely an administrative investigation and beefing it up with the power of the criminal justice system. That's wrong. I believe that teachers have a difficult job. They have a challenging job. In many instances, they're doing the jobs that we parents don't always rise to the occasion for. And the last thing they need is when their students score well on a test to worry about whether they're going to be criminally investigated, accused of a crime, perp walked out of a school in front of their students, and having their reputations wrecked, only later to have those charges dropped or dismissed or perhaps no billed by a grand jury. So the attention that has been focused on this race, I think, is helpful to let teachers have an option of whether they want the criminal justice system in their education system or not. If there's a crime, if there's evidence of a crime that's presented, then the DA will naturally follow that lead, take those cases to the grand jury. But administrative matters should not be criminalized. That's my pledge.
Thank you.
Oh, we can move it over here.
The slide over. And try and make it look like it did when he set it up.
Hello, my name's Sam Houston. I'm running to be the Texas State Attorney General. I agree with what Kim has said, and I was interested when Gail brought this matter to my attention about what the Attorney General's office, which is a statewide office, but quite frankly, there's a statute that if you were invited by the district attorney in any district to investigate these matters criminally, then the Attorney General's office would have that type of power. And it was really easy to answer that. I've always supported teachers. I've pledged as part of my campaign that I want to end the school finance lawsuit and actually get more money to the education system and actually get teachers paid more. And I can tell you, the last thing that as the Attorney General I'd want dollars used for is just what Kim was talking about, to basically make it more difficult to do their jobs, to make it where they were worried, teachers were worried about criminal prosecution if the students did better on certain tests. That's the last thing the Attorney General's office needs to do. Look, we have an issue in Texas about public education. Our teachers are the first line responders to that. And nobody here on this side, Gail, none of these teachers condone misuse of state property or cheating or stealing. Nobody condones that, but it's a process that's due. Our teachers should be encouraged to strive for excellence. Their due process should be given to them. I agree with Kim, this matter should be handled internally, administratively, for how people talk about it. That's the fair way to do it, and if there's something further, that's another matter. But let's encourage our teachers to do well on these, to help the students do well on these tests. Let's continue to encourage excellence in education and work. And I'll tell you what, I'll pledge to do more than that.
Okay.
And try to end this school finance lawsuit, get the dollars back in the classroom, get the legislature to do what they should do. Let's fund education and work on teachers' pay raises, not criminalizing certain behavior. That's my statement, and I support Kim, what she said, and I thank you for bringing this to my attention and allowing me to speak today.
No, I just want to
Okay.
thank Gail. I think we should open it up to, I want to
Right.
thank each of you.
Yeah.
And let you know that
I just have one other thing I want to say. There are tens of thousands of educators, not just teachers, educators. That's everyone
Yes.
from the custodial staff up who can face a false allegation that this DA may try and criminalize or try to get the state to assist in the criminalization. And these need to be priority races. We need to make sure that people like Kim Ogg and Sam Houston who respect educators are in office, not the crew that's there now. Question.
You addressed this a little bit, but would there be an instance where you do think that the DA should get involved in cheating? You've probably seen in the Atlanta School District, I mean, there was proof of criminal teachers changing answers. They were getting thousands of dollars for it.
Our Constitution guarantees anybody who's accused of a crime the opportunity to have that case reviewed first by a grand jury and ultimately by a fact finder, the judge or jury, if they're indicted. So if evidence is presented that appears to constitute probable cause of a crime, and that's presented by a district, then we would give that case the opportunity to be presented, not that case, we would give the presenter the opportunity to put that in front of a grand jury. Likewise, we would give the accused the opportunity to defend. I'm against direct filing where somebody is simply arrested on an accusation. They haven't been caught in the process of a crime. They're simply accused. That's what the grand jury system is for, to evaluate whether probable cause exists. So where evidence is presented by an administrator that appears to support probable cause, sure, we'll put that in front of a grand jury and we'll invite the accused to come defend themselves if they wish. That's what's not being done. These folks are being accused, filed on, put on television, tried in the court of public opinion, and convicted before there's ever a shred of evidence presented to the first reviewing body, the grand jury. That ruins people's reputations. It costs them thousands of dollars, and it fails their due process, which is what our Constitution guarantees. So I think that answers your question.
Any other questions?
Gail is under the category endorsement. Is this an official endorsement?
This is an official endorsement. It's more than an endorsement. It's a commitment that these are races we will focus on. It's not an endorsement where we're just sending out the names and saying, please vote for. This is an endorsement where we are going to mobilize teachers in multiple school districts. Stop and think. You've got the teacher representatives from our largest district in Harris County who also see the threat of criminalizing education. And we're all jointly going to work on it. And frankly, I believe that the educators in this county can make a difference in both the local and the state race, because these are close races.
Kim, going back to the key investigation predating the Atherton Jefferson investigation, this school district has spent well over north of $1 million or more hiring outside law firms to conduct investigations. In the reporting that I have seen, the superintendent has asked that the district attorney's office devote even more investigative resources when they have an allegation. Is that a misuse? I mean, what do you think of that? Is that where resources should be spent from the office you hope to lead?
I think our district attorney's office is currently wasting millions of tax dollars prosecuting low-level law violators instead of focusing on real criminals, burglars, robbers, murderers. We've got plenty of crime to investigate without piling on the school district, who has their own resources to investigate alleged employee violations of their policies. And the idea that test scores in certain neighborhoods appearing too high convey discriminatory generalities, and they lead to accusations that harm educators for the rest of their careers. I just don't think that's fair. We've got plenty to work on without trying to pile on a superintendent's notion based on statistical review that his teachers must be cheating because the kids' grades are too high. If there's evidence, show it to me, and then we'll see. And that's what grand juries are for.
Gail, I spoke to a representative for District Attorney Anderson, and he suggested that the DA's office only agreed to review what was presented to them and had made no formal commitment of resources. I guess my question is, or he went on further to say that the superintendent, he believed, inflated the DA's commitment to investigating cheating.
You know, I would.
Buy that?
No, I don't, and I'll tell you why. We were made aware by several pretty high-ranking administrators that the DA had recently indicated to HISD that she was going to send people to question teachers on anything dealing with failure to report child abuse or any allegation against the teacher, and that basically she was going to send them onto the campus to do the investigation and possibly the arrest. So the person would come in, not know, am I a witness? Am I the suspect? And I think the goal was, and I sure don't have time to get a lawyer here. You know, and that's just wrong. Generally, a school district investigates, and if they find an impropriety that rises to the level of a crime, then they report it. But even then, I mean, I've done this for over 30 years, and we've seen people arrested for things that I really wish they hadn't done. But they were never just arrested at their campus. They were called very discreetly to the central office and surrendered. You know, the idea, it's not just devastating for the teacher, but it's not a real good thing for the kids to watch their English teacher or their math teacher or even their assistant principal hauled off campus in handcuffs or dragged in to be interrogated because, you know, campuses have the best grapevine I've ever seen. So once one kid sees it, every kid knows about it. And then the rumors start. Well, you know, the police and a DA were here, and they were talking to Mr. So-and-so, and by the end of the day, that teacher has no reputation. It's just gone. I mean, right now, our Jefferson and Atherton teachers are having trouble recovering from what was a false allegation and handled far too publicly to begin with. But when you criminalize it, you just basically ruin their lives. You ruin their careers, and it's a horrible experience, to say nothing about, you know, the ones that are our members have their legal taken care of. But I can tell you, if I have one member who, by the time we finished with a criminal charge, and this was the key cheating allegations, the termination hearing, the case at the State Board of Educator Certification, to make sure she didn't lose her license after she was exonerated criminally and by the district and put back to work, those legal bills went over $150,000. For the average teacher, you're now bankrupt. So, you know, it's very important to us.
The other teacher groups behind you all are you AFT affiliates, and you're endorsing as well?
Yeah, we've pretty much taken over the county.
Yeah, one of the things that in covering this, I wasn't aware of before the Atherton and Jefferson investigation. Do teachers in HISD test their own students?
No.
Can you
That's
talk about that
that's
process?
the other absurdity is in HISD, no one is testing their own students. Now, just human nature. Am I going to risk my career, my certificate, so that you can get more money? Not going to happen. And I have seen very few cheating allegations that prove to be true. There are a lot of allegations. Some of them are sour grapes because, oh, your kid scored better than my kids over at my school, so you must have cheated. As opposed to maybe you just did more tutoring, maybe you just worked more with the kids, maybe they learned more. I mean, it elevates test scores to a whole other level when you start criminalizing behavior.
I notice we have a representative from Cy-Fair here. Correct.
Correct.
When I was out at that district the other day, I was speaking to a principal and several teachers, and they said, well, anybody who wants to comment on this, but they said, we are glad we don't have bonus money tied to teacher test scores. It's a complicating factor. We don't need it to do our job. We don't need it as motivation. I guess my question is, when you create the incentive for impropriety, is that counterproductive? Do you agree with that? Do most of your members in Cy-Fair think that tying bonus money to test performance is a bad idea?
Absolutely. Hands down. Every member that we've spoken to is grateful for the current leaders in our district in Cy-Fair that don't see the value-added measure being productive for anybody on any level.
What's behind that? Can you talk about that some more? I mean, or talk about your own feelings about it. Why do you think that? Why do you think tying cash payment to test scores is a bad idea for education?
I think that goes back to what we're talking about here today. It creates a system where no one feels that they're an equal, that they're a family. And again, I can only speak for Cy-Fair. I grew up in Cy-Fair. My sister is a teacher in Cy-Fair. It just goes back to what we're talking about here today. It just creates a very negative environment for the students and for the staff.
I'm good. What is your name?
Nikki Cowart. I can give you my card. It's Nikki.
There,
That's right.
Yeah.
Can I say a word?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Yep.
Right.
Y'all sit down over here?
No, yeah.
They could trade out with my seat.
Oh, we sure? Okay. Come on.
And if you want to give us your name, please.
All right. I'm Carrie Waschenfelder, President of Fort Bend Employee Federation, and I was asked here today because of the situation that's presented by Devin Anderson and her political statement that she made, and we think that it is a political statement, and it requires that we alert all of our teachers as to what is the issue currently involved in this race. And in the Federation, the Fort Bend Employee Federation, we have over 700 teachers that, though they work in Fort Bend ISD, live here in Harris County and will be voting in this race. And we want them to investigate this and realize the issues at stake, because all of us have seen somebody that was called to the office and asked to what had happened, what infractions had occurred. But how much worse is it if this became a criminal prosecution? This should be left, as our wonderful people here in this presentation today have stated, this should be left as an administrative matter, and only until there is sufficient evidence should it be turned over to a grand jury.
That's right.
So I'm asking all of our Fort Bend ISD teachers who live in Harris County to investigate this situation, and in the race of Harris County DA, District Attorney. Thank you.
I got one question for Sam.
Sure.
If you want. Sam, I've heard people from HISD talk about the STAR test, state standardized test, as a state document, and that any irregularity with that would be altering a state document and could rise to the area of crime. What do you think about that?
Well, it's just like I said earlier. My goal as the Attorney General, the first goal has always been to end the school finance lawsuit and get more money to these schools districts, because I think that solves a lot of problems we've been talking about. But again, as the state Attorney General, I would decline to exercise jurisdictions with any district attorney who was investigating teachers to start in the criminal process. It should be administrative. It should be internal. These are matters that can be worked out, and only then, just like Kim said, if the district attorney asked and they were presented where there already had been a crime, the school district had determined there was already evidence, then maybe the process would be due. But the issue here we're not talking about is we haven't reached that stage. We're talking about due process to teachers, treating teachers fairly, and that's what Kim and I stand for today. And Kim and I here are talking about that, is that we make sure there's a process where teachers are treated fairly, internally, and that the system encourages excellence, doesn't discourage teachers from doing their jobs. That's what we want.
Kim, I asked the same question of you.
Sorry.
I mean,
Ask it again.
well,
I just dropped the microphone.
spokesman for HISD says this is justifiable to call in these investigative resources and to get the public integrity unit to engage in these type of investigations if we call them in or ask them to come in, because a STAR test is actually a state document. What do you think about that?
It's selective prosecution, criminalizing and investigating with the power of a criminal subpoena allegations of cheating is a waste of taxpayer resources. It's double investigating. The school district has their own resources, and they're far better equipped to operate within the guidelines of and the parameters of the school setting than a criminal DA, prosecutor, or police officer ever could be. We're out of our element in the schools, and we should be. The schools are for educating kids, not for bringing in criminal investigators for administrative violations, which may or may not be true.
I say something.
Kim, did you?
No,
I was going to say, would you feel the same way on a different charge? Say, teacher accused of inappropriate relationship with student. Is there something different about cheating than, say, another charge that teachers are accused of?
Very different.
that's a whole different crime, and there is a process in place when somebody makes an allegation of sexual misconduct or assault for reporting it, investigating it off campus, and looking at it in the criminal setting. Much different. That's a crime, whereas allegations of cheating are basically administrative violations. It's a stretch to call that some kind of government document that's been tampered with. That said, if evidence existed to prove it, great, I'd look at it. I wish our DA had done that in the case of Ryan Chandler, a homicide detective who falsified an offense report, Sean Carazal, a police officer who worked at the DA's office who backdated a search warrant, and in the case of Judge Denise Pratt, a family judge who backdated and dismissed hundreds of people's cases. None of those people faced criminal charges, not even investigation. And now our DA says she wants to come into the schools where our kids are supposed to be learning and investigate cheating. I would tell you that the DA's office is not the testing police.
I would like to just add something that I'm Rita Thomas, and we represent the blue collar workers in HISD. We're the largest support personnel in AFT, and we stand here today with our teacher organization, and we're gonna get out and we're gonna push for Kim to be elected, because if we look at and Sam Houston,
Don't forget me.
all right, Sam, because we look at this, our bus drivers and our cafeteria workers and maintenance people, they look at this stuff that's going on with the teachers. If they go on to teacher, who else they gonna come next? They're gonna come at us. So we have to stand together and get these candidates elected, so they can be fair and right for our people, regardless what fields they come out of. Right?
Yes.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
I just want to give my girlfriend this.